been doing a little bit of work. I don't know, I probably don't look like it, but you know. I let the car sit over the 4th of July weekend for a couple days, and when I started it back up, the fuel pump was very, very angry at me. It was probably about 4 or 5 inches higher than it is right now. I have another one. I have a backup one, a brand new one I can put in. I'm testing out this spot right here to see if it will stay with fuel in. So my problem was it was up too high, just too high, where whenever you turn the car off, the fuel was draining back out of it. Even when I was parked back on a hill with the nose up. So I straightened up some of my wires, got it a little more cleaned up. I got the relay for the fuel pump stuck up here now. This is the only wire that's like kind of dangling around out there. It's just the brake light, my third brake light. I have it hooked up for a third brake light at least. I don't have a license plate light. So I was checking stuff out. I figured I could at least do like a little carburetor review if anyone's having issues. A lot of times what'll happen, you'll change out some boots or something like that, or you'll get one that's complete that kind of fires but won't run, or once it's warmed up it dies or won't idle. Typically what you'll find is with the dual ports and the single ports, that the boot down at the bottom where it actually joins with the head down there, the foot will not have a good seal. So either all the time there'll be a large vacuum leak there, or once it's warmed up and everything starts kind of expanding a little bit, then you end up with a gap there, and it either won't run, or you'll have an inconsistent run trying to mess with the carburetor. But either way, when in doubt with the carburetor, if you assume everything else should be good enough, but it still won't fire, you're getting fuel, you're getting spark, it's getting crank, you got the right timing, what you should always do is just go ahead and set the carburetor screws on the side here. There's a little bitty one. Let's see. There's this one, which is the air fuel. That's the bigger one. And then right below it, it's kind of hard to see, but there's a much smaller one. That's your idle fuel mix. Factory settings for most of these Volkswagen carburetors, whether they're the Bocar, Solex, most of those, it's you turn it all the way in, but you don't want to like hammer on it because it's just supposed to be blocking a passage. It doesn't need to be cranked on. If it's hard to turn, you may want to just take the whole thing out and try to clean it, and then try to run it back in. But you want to screw them all the way in, both of them, and out 2.5 full rotations. So what I normally do is I would count the half turns as I would do it, and 2.5 turns on each one should at least get you to start. Should at least get it to fire, and most likely idle a little bit, at least until it's warm, and if you have some other leaks or something like that. You always want to make sure that if you have vacuum advance, that your vacuum advance line is on there and that it's not like baked hard. You want some soft rubber on there, because they can still be connected and be just really baked to where they're not really making a seal on there. I just redid some of these with some stuff because I didn't have a very good seal on mine. And as long as all of that is good, and you do the 2.5 turns out, and you got a decent enough seal and good fuel and spark and all that business, it should fire. You should at least get some run out of it. Typically what you want to do is you can kind of overload it with the fuel, but you can turn back the smaller one. The bottom one is the fuel, the idle fuel only. The main jet for like when you're on the pedal is on the other side. They're a fixed jet. You can change those to a bigger one if you buy them. But typically the included stock one usually will get you going unless you have some sort of larger displacement motor. But once you get it running or you get it starting to fire, I would recommend using the air fuel screw first, the top one, and try to tighten up the vacuum in there. Because the more you run that in, the more vacuum you'll be able to build, because the more air you'll be blocking, the harder it is to pull it through. The harder it is to pull the air through the carburetor, the more vacuum you're going to build. So, you know, these things will start working better and stuff like that. So typically when I'm having run issues, I'm going to mess with that air screw first before the fuel screw. because you can get the RPM to go up and down just with that air fuel screw. Typically the idle fuel screw, you don't really need to mess with too much. Most of it's pretty simple. I got my stuff fairly straightened up. I got my fancy new distributor, it's still working pretty good. The Suzuki Samurai Electronics, still doing good. I did have one issue a couple weeks ago. It didn't want to start, and I came back here and touched this, and it had fallen off. I guess I didn't actually have it plugged in all the way, but it was still running before that. Yeah, it's kind of a mess in here, but I've got it. Everything has fuses on the other end. Most of this is actually low power, other than the stuff that goes, you know, just straight to supply and stuff like that. But yeah, small tutorial. I might get back into it later once the weather starts changing, if I'm still going to drive this thing, because sometimes these cars get a little temperamental when the weather changes. You might have to choke it down more or give it some more fuel. Yeah, a little overview. Look at the birdos. It's actually two male cardinals. I forget which one's male. And the red one female. There's two brown ones and the red one. They're all hanging out. Doing a bit of wiring work out here. My voltage regulator decided to get super crusty on me and try to light the car on fire. So I figured I'd come back here and spruce things up a bit. Figured I'd move it. It was up against the side here, and it got really rusty. Like this side was completely rust, and I couldn't hardly get a connection to get home. So I'm going to move it to the back wall so it'll be a little bit more covered up. I'm chopping back my main wire here. I'm adding a new piece to it, lengthening it. This is one of the ways I've been taught how to splice a wire when you got it, because I only have this wire and some 4-gauge like super fat stuff left. So as long as this works, it should be fine. Because I'd say this is around 8-gauge heavy strand, and this is 8-gauge. Like a medium strand. They're pretty thick. It's actually pretty stiff wire for how skinny it is. We're swapping that out and getting some new stuff going on. Cleaned up the regulator. Polished, well, the nut's dirty. Polished all the rest of the terminals up best I could. Can't really get much on the backside. Yeah. I got the battery unhooked, but I'm taping it off anyway. I want to light nothing on fire. If you've ever had to splice wire though, this is what I've seen, this is what I've been told. It's always worked pretty good for me in the past, and I still usually will eventually just replace it or do something better, but strip back a whole bunch of it and you got to mingle them together. And then you want to twist that up real good, and you want to tape the bejeebus out of it. Just tape the bejeebus out of it. That way, so at least you got like an inch and a half of a material wire touching each other, because you can kind of see this stuff isn't the wiring in this could be original. The car is like 54 years old, so this could be 54-year-old copper. It's a little crusty. Even I trimmed this, I cut off, you know, this much of it. There was a butt connector in the middle of it. Trimmed off this much of it, and it still looks like that in the sheeting, which isn't quite as bright as you would really want copper to look. It'd be a little more red to it. Hey, a little crusty looking. But yeah, you mingle them together real good distance. I mean, you can do 2, 3, 4 inches. I would recommend, if you're doing anything close to like a 4-gauge, 2 gauge, you want to mingle a lot of it, but it gets really difficult when it's really big wire. I mean, even this, you could say mingle 5 inches of this, and then tape the ever living crap out of that huge chunk of it. You don't ever want to like cross them over, twist them together, because you're not getting a whole lot of surface contact. This way, you get much more surface contact. Just a little FYI info. Let me get this thing wired back up. What are you guys doing? I think she's keeping the chair going. You defeated. Did you win the chair? It's your spot, right? Nice try.